It's March 19th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with the stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with the rolling day for President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment trial. The Constitutional Court may announce its ruling day to reinstate or remove President Yoon over his martial law declaration today to deliver the final verdict on Friday. If not, the ruling may even be delivered next week. The two leaders of the U.S. and Russia agreed on a partial 30-day ceasefire from attacks on energy infrastructure with Ukraine. Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky showed skepticism but did welcome the deal. The Trump administration says countries can avoid its April tariffs by cutting what it calls unfair trade barriers. It also says that on April 2nd, each country will receive a specific reciprocal tariff number that the U.S. believes represents its tariffs. It's still unclear when the Constitutional Court will deliver its ruling on President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment. If a date isn't announced by Wednesday, which is today, observers say it's likely the ruling won't be made this week. Our Oh Soo-young starts us off.
3 weeks and counting. The Constitutional Court has yet to announce when it will rule on President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment, meaning there may be no verdict this week. It took at most 2 weeks for former presidents Park Geun-hye and Roh Moo-hyun, but there has been no word from the court as of Wednesday, 22 days since Yoon's final trial hearing was held. The chance that the verdict will be delivered this Friday is looking slimmer, given that the court notified former leaders 2 to 3 days in advance of their respective ruling dates. The 8-member bench was reportedly convening even on Tuesday to deliberate on Yoon's impeachment, despite holding a trial hearing for Justice Minister Park Sung-jae. The longer-than-expected process has given rise to diverse speculations over what's holding up the justices. Some experts believe they have already decided unanimously to impeach President Yoon and are fine-tuning their positions to deliver an indisputable judgment, amid fears that the result may trigger extreme reactions from the public. The Seoul Western District Court's approval to extend a warrant to detain Yoon prompted violence from his supporters. Some believe the bench may be divided ideologically and are struggling to align their views, given how an earlier impeachment case of Korea Communications Commission Chair Lee Jin-suk was dismissed, as the justices' opinions were split evenly in line with their political orientations. In any case, the justices are facing growing calls to make a swift decision, as Yoon's prolonged suspension from office hinders effective governance of the nation. The bench is also under significant political pressure. Those supporting Yoon's impeachment wish to quickly trigger a snap presidential election, which polls show would largely favour opposition Democratic Party leader Lee Jae-myung. Meanwhile, conservatives, including Yoon's supporters, are calling for the case to be dismissed, or for the court to deliver a ruling after Lee Jae-myung's own verdict on one of his 5 criminal cases next Tuesday. If at least 6 justices agree to uphold the presidential impeachment, Yoon will be removed from office immediately, triggering an early election that must be held within 60 days. If at least 3 are against impeachment, the president will resume his duties. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
So if the court doesn't declare a ruling date today, the final verdict may even be pushed to next week. We discussed this more with Professor Song Se-ryun this morning. Welcome back, Professor Song.
Good morning.
So aren't we expecting the court to announce the ruling day today, considering the announcement comes, at least 2 to 3 days before the ruling day?
I think it is imminent, but whether it be today, nobody's sure about that. I mean, the court has 180 days to finish the impeachment, so they have the time until, theoretically, until the mid-June. But of course, the proceeding was largely over, testimony part, in February 25th. So it's going on to about a month. So given that other impeachment proceedings ended within 2 weeks, 2 weeks or 3 weeks would have been a good barometer. But I think the complexities and other considerations are making it, the court, very cautious about this schedule. But I think that end of March probably if we go into the early part of April, probably that would be a very, very late one for this proceeding, because in the middle of the April, two justices come off the bench. So regardless of 180 days mark, I think it is a realistic, very tight deadline when it gets to the April. So I would think that this week, I think that more realistically next week would be the decision day.
Indeed. Well, many are expecting that Friday will be the big day. The question is, why Friday morning? Many say Friday morning. Why ahead of the weekend?
Well, Friday is conventionally a good day to announce it because it works as a buffer. You have the weekend. The public may have the time to let off their steams, but more practically, you have a market consideration. If you announced a decision in the morning of the Friday, then the market can react to it and have a little bit of buffer over the weekend, so it gets easier to digest or whatever the decision is. But of course, this is just a convention or convenience, and it's a good idea to do it on Friday, but it's not a mandate. So the court, if they have more to discuss, more to deliberate, they'll spend their time.
Well, you mentioned that the justices are being very careful and cautious at the moment. But what do you think the justices are contemplating at this point of the progress? Or do you think they're trying to make unilateral votes, or what to include their final statements? What's on their mind?
Well, their question before them is whether to keep the job for President Yoon as a president or not. And there are procedural issues and the substantive issues and the testimonies that they have to consider because they are the fact finder. So there are numerous considerations they have. I think the biggest one is whether the elements for the constitutional requirement for the martial law is met, and second part is whether they are serious enough to strip him off the position. I think that the unanimous vote consideration, I think it is important because the court, although they are not required to consider political considerations, but the Constitutional Court, of course, has to think about the decisions they make, and probably that'll transpire some political schedules if there is a decision to strip them off the presidency. Then there has to be an election in 60 days. So they are mindful of the consequences of their decision. But I think that the most important thing they will focus on at this point is whether the decision is constitutionally sound and convincing to the people. And I think they're extra cautious about what kind of decision and what wordings, verbiage they will use to make that decision.
Well, it's been a while since we heard from President Yoon himself. He's been remaining silent ever since his release from custody. Has been maintaining very low profile posture. But why do you think he's being so quiet, and why is the legal team saying that it won't release a statement until the ruling?
I think that's a wise thing to do as somebody who's waiting for the decision of the court. I wouldn't be surprised if not only himself, but he gave somewhat of a mum order to the people around him, to the defensive team as well, because you want to appear humble and respect the court's decision. I mean, what he says or what things that his people would say might instigate his supporters or can be misconstrued as somebody who's not really respecting the court's decisions. So he doesn't want to get into any kind of misunderstanding at this point, and probably he will keep silent until the decision is made.
maybe keeping a low profile, maybe the least and best that Yoon can do at this point. Now, Professor Song, before I let you go, we should probably expect the ruling for Prime Minister Han Duck-soo's impeachment to come after the ruling for President Yoon, right?
Well, that's what people expect at this point, but I think there are enough variables because their decision would affect, or the decision, what comes first would affect the other in a way the political process is arranged. Remember, the presidential impeachment is more important than the Mr. Han's ministerial decision at this point. But I think that if the Prime Minister Han's decision comes first, I think he might indicate, or people will construe it as an indication that the certain decision will be made for President Yoon. But at this point, I think the prudent thing to assume is that more important agenda is taken care of first, and that would be the president's impeachment motion.
All right, Professor Song, thank you so much for your time and your insights. As always, we appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
The U.S. and Russia have made a partial deal for Russia and Ukraine to stop attacking energy and infrastructure facilities. For now, our Choi Soo-hyung has the latest.
U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin have agreed on a limited ceasefire and energy and infrastructure targets in Russia and Ukraine. On Tuesday local time, the White House announced that in a lengthy phone call between both parties, Russia agreed to halt attacks on energy and infrastructure facilities for 30 days. The Kremlin stated that Putin had immediately ordered a halt to attack on these sites. During the 3-year conflict between Russia and Ukraine, attacks on these sites caused immense damage. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky also stated that he supports Trump's proposal.
We support all steps towards ending the war. We will give support, but in order to support something, we need to understand what specifically it is.
He expressed his willingness to speak with Trump at any time to hear the details on the phone talks with Putin. He also stated that Ukraine cannot be excluded from future discussions on the details of the ceasefire. However, a full ceasefire still seems some way off. Recently, Putin rejected Trump's proposal for a 30-day full ceasefire, citing concerns such as Ukraine's potential rearmament. During the call, Putin also insisted that foreign military and intelligence assistance to Ukraine should be halted. Europe welcomed the agreement between Trump and Putin, but stressed that Ukraine's position must be taken into account. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and French President Emmanuel Macron stated in a press conference on Tuesday that Ukraine must be involved in the negotiations to achieve a just peace for Ukraine. Meanwhile, Moscow said that Russia and Ukraine are set to exchange 175 prisoners of war each on Wednesday. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
Now, according to U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, some reciprocal tariffs may be avoided under a pre-negotiated deal or negotiations after April 2nd. Our Lee Seung-jae tells us more.
U.S. President Donald Trump said he would be announcing a detailed plan on the reciprocal tariffs on U.S. imports by April 2nd. With the deadline looming, the Trump administration is showing some flexibility with its tariff policies. Speaking to Fox News on Tuesday, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent expressed optimism that come April 2nd, some of the tariffs may not go into effect if a deal is pre-negotiated or if countries look to negotiate after April 2nd. Emphasizing that the U.S. is only in pursuit of fair and reciprocal trade, Bessent said that countries that stop trade practices that the U.S. deems unfair could avoid reciprocal tariffs. Such practices include non-tariff barriers, currency manipulation, unfair funding, and labor suppression. Meanwhile, Bessent said that come April 2nd, Each country will receive a specific reciprocal tariff number deemed fair by the U.S. He added that the tariff calculation would be determined by the U.S. Trade Representative and the U.S. Commerce Department. The U.S. Treasury Secretary said that he has not seen any figures yet, as they are still being calculated. While Besant believes reciprocal tariffs could lead to a win-win situation for everyone, they have raised concerns here in South Korea, with trade officials keen to avoid new U.S. tariffs. Seoul fears that with South Korea's trade surplus with the U.S. reaching over $55 billion last year, it could be a major target for the Trump administration. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And Washington apparently continues to sending a message to its trading partners ahead of the April tariffs. Now this time identifying Korea as a major trade deficit country. Our Shin-young explains.
With about 2 weeks until the announcement of reciprocal tariff plans, a top economic aide to U.S. President Donald Trump mentioned South Korea as a major trade deficit country. U.S. National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett told CNBC on Monday that trade deficits with Europe, China, and South Korea have persisted for years, claiming the deficits are attributable to the country's high tariffs and non-tariff trade barriers. He added that if U.S. trading partners immediately lower all barriers, the negotiations will be over. Since South Korea and the U.S. have a free trade agreement that removes tariffs on most items, Hassett's statement is raising expectations of increased pressure on South Korea to lower non-tariff trade barriers.
The Trump administration is focused on fixing trade imbalances and seems to be taking a one-on-one approach with countries that have large trade deficits. For South Korea, this could mean either imposing tariffs to reduce imports or negotiating to lower barriers, so South Korea can import more from the U.S.
The expert from the Korea Institute for International Economic Policy emphasized the need for South Korea to review its contributions to the U.S. and assess potential U.S. demands on non-tariff trade barriers.
We need to review our contributions to the U.S. and potential demands from the U.S. on non-tariff trade barriers. However, with many uncertainties, it's too early for negotiations.
Meanwhile, during the interview with CNBC, Hassett said there will be some uncertainty between now and April 2nd, referring to the date Trump is set to unveil his reciprocal tariff plans. His comments come as market analysts and business leaders have criticized the sweeping tariff announcements, which have led to volatility in world markets. However, Hassett defended Trump's tariffs against Mexico, Canada, and China, calling them very positive developments, adding things will clear up after April 2nd. Shin-young, Arirang News.
International credit rating agency Fitch has revised down its growth outlook for the U.S. Due to the risk of a global trade war. In its economic outlook report released on Tuesday, it revised down its growth forecast from 2.1% to 1.7%. It also lowered its outlook for 2026 from 1.7% to 1.5%. The agency explained the potential global trade war due to the tariff policy of the current U.S. administration is expected to slow U.S. and global growth while increasing inflation in the U.S. It also revised down the 2025 global economic growth forecast from 2.6% to 2.3%. The top diplomats of South Korea, Japan, and China are to hold talks this week over in Tokyo. Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yeol will have a three-way meeting with his Japanese counterpart Takeshi Iwaya and Chinese counterpart Wang Yi on Saturday. Now the talks come for the first time in more than a year since November 2023. The three sides are to assess the progress of trilateral cooperation since their leaders summit that took place in May last year and exchange views on regional and international issues. Joe is to hold one-on-one talks with his Japanese and Chinese counterparts, as well as a key agenda about preparations for the 60th anniversary of the normalization of Seoul-Tokyo ties with Iwaya and the APEC summit with Wang. Korean historical art treasures are being showcased at Germany's 400-year-old Dresden Royal Palace. According to the National Museum of Korea on Tuesday, this large-scale exhibition, the first of its kind in Germany in 25 years, is being held in collaboration with the Dresden State Art Collections. Among the highlights is one of the famous gold crowns from the Silla Kingdom, often referred to as the City of Gold, dating back around 1500 years. The exhibition, which opened on Saturday, will run until August and features over 300 Korean artifacts, including items from the Igan-hee collection.
Good morning, I'm Choi Ji-hee, and this is The World Now. Israel resumed extensive airstrikes across Gaza on Tuesday, killing over 400 Palestinians, injuring hundreds, and shattering the already fragile ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the airstrikes are just the beginning and part of a broader strategy to dismantle Hamas and secure the release of Israeli hostages. He emphasized that future negotiations would proceed under fire, indicating a readiness to continue military operations. While both Israel and the United States blame the renewed hostilities on Hamas, the international community has widely condemned the renewed violence. The United Nations has expressed deep concern over the escalating humanitarian crisis, and several countries, including Egypt and France, have called for an immediate halt in hostilities. The European Union has unveiled a plan to bolster its defense capabilities by 2030, aiming to enhance military autonomy and reduce reliance on external allies. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen announced on Tuesday in Copenhagen the EU's initiative to rearm itself by 2030, targeting a significant enhancement of the bloc's defense infrastructure. The strategy aims to establish a credible deterrent in response to evolving geopolitical threats, notably the ongoing conflict in Ukraine and uncertainties regarding U.S. military support. The Readiness 2030 strategy, which will be announced on Wednesday local time, comprises several key components, including fiscal flexibility, defense loans, and infrastructure development. The proposal also includes the creation of a European military sales mechanism to streamline collective arms procurement across the EU and support arms manufacturers. Meanwhile, in Germany, the parliament has approved a historic spending package aimed at revitalizing the economy and bolstering defense capabilities. The legislation, championed by incoming Chancellor Friedrich Merz, secured a two-thirds majority in the parliament. Key components of the package include a $545 billion fund allocated over 12 years for infrastructure modernization and provisions for unlimited defense spending, facilitated by constitutional amendments easing strict debt regulations. The bill now awaits approval from Germany's upper house to become law. The International Olympic Committee commenced its 144th session in ancient Olympia, Greece, on Tuesday local time. The session holds particular significance as it comes just before the election of a new IOC president set to take place on March 20th. 7 candidates are contending for the presidency, including prominent figures such as the current IOC vice president and an Olympic swimming champion who is Zimbabwe's current sports minister. Outgoing President Thomas Bach, who has led the IOC since 2013, addressed the assembly at the Olympic Academy, emphasizing the session's role in honoring the organization's heritage and future.
The spring snow wonderland melted away fairly quickly yesterday, but the spring cold is sticking around through today. This morning was off to an even colder start than yesterday. Many inner areas saw sub-zero temperatures, with Taegwallyeong seeing a low near minus 20 degrees Celsius. And those in the east of Gangwon-do in particular need to be extra careful on icy roads and sidewalks. Despite the colder temperatures, the ultrafine dust level will remain high high in the capital region and Chungcheongdo and Gyeongsang-Namdo provinces during the morning. But we'll have plenty of sunshine with afternoon highs similar to yesterday, topping out at 7 degrees here in Seoul, Daegu, and Gwangju, make it to 9 degrees Celsius. But a strong wind will make it feel colder. But the cold spell will ease from tomorrow afternoon with temperatures returning to season norms. It's going to feel like mid-April over the weekend and into early next week under clear skies. But for today, stay warm and take care. Many are coming down with a cold these days.
And that wraps up our morning edition of Arirang News. We'll be back with more stories making the headlines at 5 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.